there's got to be a way this weekend could have gone better for Pitt. There probably was something that could have happened that made this a better, more productive weekend for Pitt. One of Pitt's teams did lose this weekend in the ACC tournament nonetheless, so I guess that outcome could have been changed, and this weekend would have gone better. They didn't get any commitments. There were no big recruiting wins or anything like that this weekend for Pitt, but there had to have been something. I don't know what it could have been. Maybe Larry Fitzgerald. I was going to say it came up with an extra year of eligibility, but that's not. He's pretty old at this point, so that's not. That wouldn't be it. Victory Heights project could be done, or maybe never started. I don't know. I'm not really sure, because just about everything that could have gone well for Pitt or needed to go right for Pitt pretty much went right for Pitt and went well for Pitt. This was a really good, for a weekend with no football whatsoever, where the football team was off, and even that was sort of a good thing. Not in some funny, well, at least they can't lose because they're off, but I mean, it was an opportunity to get healthy, get more guys back and ready to go for this huge stretch run coming up here in November, this final quarter of the season. But just about every outcome you could have drawn up of things that would be good for Pitt, they pretty much all came to fruition. This was a really good weekend for Pitt, and on a lot of levels, across a lot of sports. And it has set the table for what I think we're all looking forward to, which is a big next few weeks. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what happened over the weekend. We always do the Monday thoughts, on Saturday's game or whatever it is, Monday thoughts from the weekend, Morning Pitt on Monday mornings. And I thought, well, with no football game, we're not going to be able to do that. Oh yeah, we are going to be able to do that, because there is a lot to discuss that happened over the weekend, even though Pitt didn't play a football game. So let's talk about what this weekend was for Pitt, how it looked, how it went down, and where we go from here. It's the Morning Pitt, the Monday edition. My voice cracked already. The Morning Pitt Monday edition here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Monday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. First Monday after an off weekend for the football team in a little while. Pitt had an off weekend, of course, after the West Virginia game. And so it's been however long that's been, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I kind of go back and forth, like as we were going through the different topics last week and talking about different things on the Morning Pitt throughout the week last week, I was kind of like, well, thinking ahead a little bit, I'm going to have to plan things out, going to make sure we have stuff to talk about, in this next week, even though it's the week leading up to the game. We'll certainly have a lot to talk about Pitt Notre Dame heading into Saturday's game at Acrisure Stadium. But I was like, we might have to get a little creative. We'll have to talk some hoops. We'll have to talk this, talk that. But then this ended up being a really, really good weekend for Pitt sports. Certainly for the football program, even though they didn't play, a lot of good outcomes happened on that front. And then kind of almost all of other Pitt's programs had a really good, successful weekend. There was really only one that lost of the various teams and programs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how you count it, 7 Pitt teams that played over the weekend. And there was only one loss among those 7 teams or squads, or however you want to look at it. So we'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about what happened for the football program and kind of what is setting up for this week, because I just can't get over how good of a weekend this was for Pitt. Almost too good. Starts to make you wait for that other shoe to drop. But let's be honest, we're talking about Pitt fans, right? You guys are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Listen, before we jump into it, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And as always, don't forget to head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com. We've got coverage of everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. Let's recap the weekend in terms of games and meets and matches and all of that. Pitt volleyball, still rolling. They're 21-3 overall after a pair of matches over the weekend. They had Virginia Tech on Friday, Virginia on Sunday, swept both of those matches. They've won 9 in a row, 21 out of the last 22. They lost at Miami a month ago today. It was October 10th. 1 month ago today, they lost at Miami. It was their first loss since the first 2 matches of the season. After that, they swept Florida State, beat Notre Dame and Louisville in 5 sets each. And in the last 6 matches since then, they've only lost 2 sets total. They swept NC State. They swept Wake Forest. They swept Duke. They swept Virginia Tech. They swept Virginia. And they went to 5 sets against North Carolina. I mean, like, this team is so dominant. It's tough to compare them to, like, last year's team, which was really, really, really good. But this year's team is winning with the same level of dominance, of just steamrolling opponents, like the killers that they are. One thing to keep an eye on is Brooke Mosher, the outstanding setter. She got hurt over the weekend, so you kind of monitor that going forward and see what comes out of it. But I mean, they're rolling right now and look really good, as they always do, and they're coming up toward the postseason themselves. Men's basketball, Pitt men's basketball on Friday night beat Longwood 78-60. It was a game that was probably closer than anyone wanted it to be. Went back and forth for more often and longer than anyone would have expected. But in the end, Pitt won by 18 and won and covered for the second game in a row. 2 for 2 this season on wins and covers. DeMarco Minor scored 23 points. He was 4 of 7 from the 3-point line. It was the 4th time in his career that he's had at least 4 made 3-pointers in a game. He was also 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Brandon Cummings scored 19 points. He shot 5 of 8 from 3. Cam Corrin grabbed 12 rebounds. He's now got 25 rebounds through 2 games. And Papa Amadou Conti had 8 against Longwood on Friday night. He's got 18 rebounds in the first 2 games. Pitt, another pretty dominating night on the glass. But really notable is they shot 40% from 3, which and attempted 30 3-pointers. I don't think that's going to be the model for Pitt every night. I don't think they really should be shooting 30 3-pointers, but on Friday night they were able to make them. We'll see what happens there. They have Eastern Michigan tonight at the Peterson Event Center. Pitt women's basketball opened their regular season with a loss to Drexel, but they bounced back on Saturday, and they beat Mount St. Mary's by 14. They were plus 14 on the glass. They shot 53% from the floor. They had 24 turnovers. They only had 10 in their loss to Drexel, but that turnovers were a bit of an issue against Mount St. Mary's. They'll get Cornell at home tomorrow night. The Pitt wrestling team was at Buffalo and won that meet. The Pitt swimming and diving they were in a tri-meet in Ohio or against Akron and Miami of Ohio, and seemed like they won all of their, some of these individual sports. It's a little bit trickier of was that a win or a loss, but it looked like they ended up winning in that, both of those over the weekend. And then men's soccer, the Pitt men's soccer team, after advancing to the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament, they entered the tournament as a number 13 seed. Earlier in the week on Wednesday, they beat number 4 seed Clemson. But then on Sunday, I think it was, they faced number 12 seed Cal, who had also advanced with an upset. They beat number 5 seed Duke in the first round. So 13 seed Pitt versus 12 seed Cal in the quarterfinals on Sunday, and Pitt lost 1-0. Right, because it's soccer. Pitt ended up finishing the season 6-7-5 with a 1-4-3 record in the ACC. Not great there, but that's an interesting program that has shown a bit of its ceiling over the past few years. This year, not quite up to the standard previously, but overall, a pretty good weekend from Pitt. Wins for the volleyball team, men's basketball, women's basketball, wrestling, swimming, diving. That's pretty good. And then you get to the football team. And the football team didn't play a game on Saturday, but they got just about every result they could have wanted out of that weekend. And you really look at it from 2 angles. How things stack up in the ACC race and how things stack up with the college football playoff rankings. And they're both relevant. They're both worth keeping an eye on. The ACC race is a bit more tangible in terms of a path to the college football playoffs. Whereas the CFP rankings, you're obviously relying on an outside party to decide where you stack up there, but it's worth looking at a few games around you to kind of see what happens. In terms of the ACC, there were a couple big results for Pitt. Number 14, Virginia, lost to Wake Forest, who was unranked. Lost at home to Wake Forest, 16-9. Virginia did not have a loss in a conference game. As a real quick aside, everybody, yes, earlier this season, Virginia played NC State. Yes, Virginia lost that game. No, it was not a conference game. Virginia and NC State scheduled that as a non-conference game. This has happened a few times in the last few years in the ACC where two conference teams play each other as non-conference opponents. It's wonky, it's weird, but that's what it is. What's relevant now is to understand that that will not be considered in ACC tiebreakers. Why would that be considered in ACC tiebreakers in the first place? Because NC State could be a common opponent, like with, Pitt. Pitt and Virginia have both played NC State. NC State beat Virginia. Pitt beat NC State. It doesn't matter for conference tiebreakers. I confirm this with the ACC that game will not be counted in conference tiebreakers. Okay, that doesn't count as a common opponent, is what the ACC told me. Okay, so keep that in mind. Virginia entered this weekend undefeated in ACC play. They lost to unranked Wake Forest 16-9 in Charlottesville. Then you also had Louisville, number 15. And this one is just as big for Pitt, if not bigger, because the Cardinals, of course, have a head-to-head tiebreaker advantage over Pitt, having beaten the Panthers in Eli Holstein's final start. Well, Louisville hosted Cal, unranked Cal. Game went to overtime. Cal went for the win, and they got it, 29-26. And these two games, Virginia losing to Wake Forest, Louisville losing to Cal, are big equalizers for Pitt. Virginia was undefeated in ACC games, so they had an advantage over Pitt there because Pitt had one loss in conference play. And Louisville had one loss, but that tiebreaker advantage over the Panthers because of the head-to-head. And because you're in a 17-team league, where not everybody's going to play everybody, this was never really going to resolve itself. Like Virginia's next two games, it's not like they were going to play Duke at some point or that Pitt was going to get a shot at them at some point. It's not like Virginia was going to play Louisville at some point or that Pitt was going to get a shot at Virginia at some point. Virginia is at Duke this weekend, then they're off, and then they host Virginia Tech. Louisville, I didn't even write down Louisville's remaining schedule because, they have SMU at home in 2 weeks. But because Louisville lost that game, they now have two conference losses. So they're kind of out of the mix. What you're really looking at is 5 teams right now that have one loss in ACC play. And chances are, I think you probably a 95% chance, if not 99% chance, that the two teams in the ACC championship game will come from this group of 5 one-loss teams currently. Georgia Tech, who's 5-1. Virginia, who's now 5-1. SMU, who is now 5-1. I think they beat Boston College over the weekend. Pitt's 5-1, and then Duke is 4-1 in ACC play. Duke just lost at UConn, but that doesn't matter. Or lost to UConn, but that doesn't matter. So you've got these 5 teams: Georgia Tech, Virginia, SMU, Pitt, and Duke. Pitt obviously has their schedule. They have Notre Dame this weekend. That's what all the focus is on. But that game doesn't count for any of these things we're talking about. It's the 2 games after that. It's at Georgia Tech in 2 weeks, and it's the regular season finale against Miami. Because Pitt plays Georgia Tech, that the winner of that game will have a head-to-head advantage over each other, right? One of them is going to be at 2 losses, and one of them is going to have a head-to-head advantage. Okay, so that's a huge game. It's going to go a long way in determining who gets into the ACC championship game. And then also, if Pitt wins that game, they'll have a common opponent advantage over Duke, who's right now 4-1 in the ACC. Duke finishes with Virginia this week, at Carolina next week, and then Wake Forest in the regular season finale. Pitt will get a common opponent advantage over Duke because Duke lost to Georgia Tech. So if Pitt can beat the Yellow Jackets, they're going to do themselves a whole lot of good. We could go a long way talking about scenarios and this and that and who needs with what and what, here's the rooting interest. Okay. Here's what you're rooting for if you are a Pitt fan. Okay. This is what you're looking for. You want Pitt to win, right? Pitt, I guess we should say this. Pitt winning out in the 2 ACC games. Notre Dame, you want that for different reasons. In terms of making the ACC championship game, you want Pitt to win out. They got to win at Georgia Tech, and they got to beat Miami in the regular season finale. That's where it all starts. If you don't do that, I don't even know if you can finish in the top 3. If you win both of those games, you'll finish no lower than 3rd. How can you get into the top 2? If you win both of those games, you need Virginia or SMU to lose a game. SMU off this weekend. Then they have Louisville and at Cal. Virginia, like I said, at Duke. They're off this week, the next weekend, and then they have Virginia Tech. So you've got 4 games. 4 games there. Virginia Duke, Virginia Tech, SMU Louisville, SMU Cal. 4 games. You need one of those 4, just one, not even 2, not 3, not all 4, one game out of those 4 to go your way. You need Duke to beat Virginia, or Virginia Tech to beat Virginia, or Louisville to beat SMU, or Cal to beat SMU. You need Pitt to win out, the 2 games, Georgia Tech and Miami, and you need one of those 4 games to go your way. Given that 2 games went Pitt's way this past weekend, there's a decent chance of it happening. I think if Pitt wins out, it's not a lock that they make the ACC championship game because they would still need one of those 4 games to go their way. But if Pitt wins out, I would say you've got a better than 75% chance. But that's a completely made up number off the top of my head. That means even less than like FPI and all these other percentages and numbers you see online. Like that's a number I just completely invented. Quote it. Say it to your friends. So this was a good weekend for Pitt in terms of its ACC championship path. What about the college football playoff rankings? Pitt, of course, debuted at number 24 in the college football playoff rankings last week, the first CFP rankings of the year. And with Pitt, with the Panthers being off, you end up looking around and watching the scoreboard and seeing what other teams are doing or the teams around Pitt in the rankings, how they're doing. And, well, that worked out pretty well, too. Pitt, like I said, at number 24. Number 23 was Washington. And Washington went to Wisconsin. Wisconsin had 2 wins coming into this game over the weekend. I think they beat Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee or something like that. And Wisconsin beat Washington. Number 23, Washington lost to Wisconsin. Number 22, Missouri hosted or was at no, I think they were at home. I forget where the game was, but they played at Texas A&M. Number 3, Texas A&M. They lost that game. No shame in losing that, just like there's no shame in number 20, Iowa, losing to number 9, Oregon. I mean, you lost to some, 2 top 10 teams, 2 of the best teams in the country. There's no shame in that, but you'll probably get dinged for it a little bit. And Pitt at number 24 is sitting behind 3 teams, number 20, number 22, and number 23, who all lost. I have to think Pitt's going to move up a little bit. Like, I have to think Washington, losing to an unranked 2-win team, is going to drop out of the top 25. Like, how couldn't you? You lost to an unranked 2-win team. And so, if nothing else, Pitt should climb to number 23. I think they've got a chance to get to 22 or 21, depending on what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee does with Missouri and Iowa. But there again, you get a couple outcomes that just sort of work in your favor. And ultimately, like, I know like those rankings, like, oh, does it matter? Just need to focus on this, focus on that. Look, I don't think it's impossible. And we talked about this a lot last week when Pitt showed up in the first college football playoff ranking. I don't think it's impossible for Pitt to climb potentially even into the top 12 by the time this is over. I don't think that's completely crazy. Number 1, because they're starting off at number 24, and then they'll probably climb a couple spots here, maybe be a little bit closer to 20, and then they get 3 straight weeks of ranked opponents. Assuming nothing crazy happens and teams get dropped out of the polls or out of the college football playoff ranking, but you get 3 straight weeks of ranked opponents. If you're right around 20 and you beat 3 consecutive ranked opponents, one on the road, one potentially as a top 10 team, one being a top 10 team in Notre Dame, like I don't think it's crazy at all to imagine that you could climb 8 to 10 spots, 11 spots, and get into the top 12. So it is relevant to watch those CFP rankings and the teams around Pitt in the rankings. It is relevant to keep an eye on those things because if the ACC championship game doesn't work out, if Pitt wins out and they somehow get left out at 10-2, they could possibly, I think they could have a case as an at-large team, which at that point they would have won, 8 games in a row, including 3 consecutive ranked opponents. I think you can make a case. All right, and then the biggest news that came out yesterday, College Game Day coming to Pittsburgh. We talked about it. I feel like even at the beginning of the season it was like, wow, is there ever a game that Game Day could come to Pitt? And it's like, well, maybe that Notre Dame game, the second, third week of November, maybe that Notre Dame game. And then as the season went on, West Virginia, Louisville, you're like, well, that's not going to happen. I think it was after the Florida State game that I started thinking to myself, like, you could pencil this in and get both teams at 7-2, potentially ranked by the time that game happens. And if you've got two 7-2 teams, both ranked, two historic programs, obviously Notre Dame being, a really prominent one, maybe you got a case. And here it is. First time in 20 years, College Game Day will be on campus on a Saturday, or it'll be at Acrisure Stadium on a Saturday. Yes, they were here 3 years ago, but that was a Thursday night for the return of the Backyard Brawl. This will be College Game Day broadcasting live from the stadium for the first time in 20 years. They were here, Dave Wanstead's first game, another Pitt Notre Dame game. Dave Wanstead and Charlie Weiss's first game way back in 2005. They are coming back, and we'll finish on that note. We'll finish on this note, I should say. It is all lining up. All of it. Like every element that could line up for this game to be absolutely enormous is lining up. College Game Day, nationally televised on ABC. You're 7-2. You're ranked. You got wins and games around you that helped your cause, both in the college football playoff and in the ACC race. This is the spotlight. This is the stage. This is the big one. This is the moment when you can go out and do it. I hope that doesn't scare you as a Pitt fan. I hope that didn't just give you nightmares there and you don't lose sleep all week thinking about how much is really on the line in this game. Even though, something we'll probably repeat too many times this week, there's a ton on the line in this game. But also, there's not, right? Because, win or lose in this game, you are going to be depending heavily on those final two games, the two ACC games. If you win, then you need Georgia Tech and Miami to actually win or lose. You need to beat Georgia Tech and Miami to have a shot at the ACC championship game. If you win it against Notre Dame, those games are going to help you solidify your case as an at-large team, in addition to helping you potentially get to the ACC championship game. Those games are really the prize, but boy, howdy, is this a big prize looming out there on Saturday. I'm excited. I hope you are too. And I hope you're not losing too much sleep. Not yet, at least. This is going to be a gigantic game. That place is going to be electric. If Pitt makes some big plays, the roof is going to blow off that thing. I don't know if I've ever heard it louder. Well, I never thought I would ever hear it louder than I heard it the day that Ryan Lewis made the game-sealing interception against Penn State in 2016. 6 years later, I heard it louder when MJ Devonshire had the pick six to beat West Virginia in the return of the Backyard Brawl. And I don't think I've ever heard it louder than that. This Saturday could be the day. This Saturday could be the day when it gets louder than it has ever been in that building. Pitt, Steelers, Taylor Swift. Yeah, I think it would even be louder than Taylor Swift. This is going to be a fun one. We got all week to talk about it, too. We're going to be getting you ready for this game all week long right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We'll have the live show on Wednesday night. Of course, we'll have a live post-game show after the game on Saturday and these Morning Pitt episodes every day of the week to get you ready for Pitt Notre Dame. I can't wait. I'm sure you can't wait. We're probably both already ready, you and me both, but we got 4 more days to wait, and then we'll get there. All right. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you've had a great weekend. Hope your Monday gets this week off to a great start. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.